Hey, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Nobody is here? 0 viewers? What's going on? Am I even streaming on my channel? Are people just ignoring me this morning? For real, it says there's nobody watching. You know what? I don't need nobody to listen. I'm just gonna talk to myself. Now I gotta go over here and look. It says nobody's on. That don't seem right. Don't seem right. Something's going on. I gotta go look. Maybe y'all just slow this morning. Having a hard time getting out of your own way. Let's see. Says I'm live. Where you at? All right, people are joining now. It's slow motion this morning. Say good morning. Say something to me so I know you're here. Says you're there. All right, I'm going to start talking and hopefully you'll show up. Getting self-conscious. Things aren't working. There we go. Oh my gosh. People are there now. Hey, Faith. Hey, Lori. That was weird. Usually people are on, like right off. It must have been slow this morning. All right, April 27th. David captures Rabbah. 2 Samuel 12:26 through 31. Meanwhile, Joab was fighting against Rabbah, the capital of Ammon, and he captured the royal fortifications. Joab sent messengers to tell David, I have fought against Rabbah and captured its water supply. Now bring the rest of the army and capture the city. Otherwise, I will capture it and get credit for the victory. So David gathered the rest of the army and went to Rabbah, and he fought against it and captured it. David removed the crown from the king's head, and it was placed on his own head. The crown was made of gold and set with gems, and it weighed 75 pounds. Can you imagine wearing a 75-pound crown on your head? I could do it if I had to. David took a vast amount of plunder from the city. He also made slaves of the people of Rabbah and forced them to labor with saws, iron picks, and iron axes and work in brick kilns. This is how he dealt with the people of all the Ammonite towns. David and all the army returned to Jerusalem. 1 Chronicles 20:2 through 3. Then David went to Rabbah and removed the crown from the king's head, and it was placed on his own head. The crown was made of gold and set with gems, and he found that it weighed 75 pounds. David took a vast amount of plunder from the city. He also made slaves of the people of Rabbah and forced them to labor with saws, iron picks, and iron axes. That is how David dealt with the people of the Ammonite towns. Then David and all the army returned to Jerusalem. The rape of Tamar, 2 Samuel 13:1 through 22. Now David's son Absalom had a beautiful sister named Tamar, and Amnon, her half-brother, fell desperately in love with her. Amnon became so obsessed with Tamar that he became ill. She was a virgin, and Amnon thought he could never have her. But Amnon had a very crafty friend, his cousin Jonadab. He was the son of David's brother Shimea. One day Jonadab said to Amnon, "What's the trouble? Why should a son of a king look so dejected morning after morning?" So Amnon told him, "I am in love with Tamar, your brother Absalom's sister." "Well," Jonadab said, "I'll tell you what to do. Go back and pretend you are ill. When your father comes in to see you, ask him to let Tamar come and prepare some food for you. Tell him you'll feel better if she prepares it as you watch and feeds you with her own hands." So Amnon lay down and pretended to be sick, and when the king came to see him, Amnon asked, "Please let my sister Tamar come and cook my favorite dish as I watch. Then I can eat it from her own hands." So David agreed and sent Tamar to Amnon's house to prepare some food for him. When Tamar arrived at Amnon's house, she went to the place where he was lying down so he could watch her mix some dough. Then she baked his favorite dish for him, and when she set the serving tray before him, he refused to eat. "Everyone get out of here," Amnon told his servants, so they all left. Then he said to Tamar, "Now bring the food into my bedroom and feed it to me here." So Tamar took his favorite dish to him, but as she was feeding him, he grabbed her and demanded, "Come to bed with me, my darling sister." "No, my brother," she cried. "Don't be foolish. Don't do this to me. Such wicked things aren't done in Israel. Where could I go in my shame? And you would be called one of the greatest fools in Israel. Please, just speak to the king about it, and he will let you marry me. Weird, too. But Amnon wouldn't listen to her, and since he was stronger than she was, he raped her. Then suddenly Amnon's love turned to hate, and he hated her even more than he loved her. Get out of here, he snarled at her. No, no, Tamar cried. Sending me away now is worse than what you've already done to me. But Amnon wouldn't listen to her. He shouted for his servants and demanded, Throw this woman out and lock the door behind her. So the servant pulled her out and locked the door behind her. She was wearing a long, beautiful robe, as was the custom in those days for the king's virgin daughters. But now Tamar tore her robe and put ashes on her head, and then with her face in her hands she went away crying. Her brother Absalom saw her and asked, Is it true that Amnon has been with you? Well, my sister, keep quiet for now, since he's your brother. Don't you worry about it. So Tamar lived as a desolate woman in her brother Absalom's house. When King David heard what had happened, he was very angry, and though Absalom never spoke to Amnon about this, he hated Amnon deeply because of what he had done to his sister. Absalom's revenge on Amnon. Exactly, Sarah. That's the way I feel. 2 Samuel 13, 23 through 29. 2 years later, when Absalom's sheep were being sheared at Baal Hazor near Ephraim, Absalom invited the king's sons to come to a feast. He went to the king and said, My sheep shearers are now at work. Would the king and his servants please come to celebrate the occasion with me? The king replied, No, my son. If we all came, we would be too much of a burden on you. Absalom pressed him, but the king would not come, though he gave Absalom his blessing. Well then, Absalom said, If you can't come, how about sending my brother Amnon with us? Why, Amnon? The king asked, but Absalom kept on pressing the king until he finally agreed to let all of his sons attend, including Amnon. So Absalom prepared a feast fit for a king. Absalom told his men, Wait until Amnon gets drunk. Then at my signal, kill him. Don't be afraid. I'm the one who has given the command. Take courage and do it. So at Absalom's signal, they murdered Amnon. Then the other sons of the king jumped on their mules and fled. Why is that such a funny vision for me? Jumping on a mule and flee. Instead of riding a horse, gallantly away, they jumped on their mules and they fled. I don't know why that cracks me up so much, but it does. As they were on their way back to Jerusalem, the report reached David. Absalom has killed all the king's sons. Not one is left alive. The king got up, tore his robe, and threw himself on the ground. His advisers also tore their clothes in horror and sorrow. But just then, Jonadab, the son of David's brother Shemaiah, arrived and said, No, don't believe that all the king's sons have been killed. It was only Amnon. Absalom has been plotting this ever since Amnon raped his sister Tamar. No, my lord the king, your sons aren't all dead. It was only Amnon. Meanwhile, Absalom escaped. Then the watchman on the Jerusalem wall saw a great crowd coming down the hill on the road from the west. He ran to tell the king, I see a crowd of people coming from the Horonaim road along the side of the hill. Look, Jonadab told the king, they are there now. The king's sons are coming, just as I said. They soon arrived, weeping and sobbing, and the king and all his servants wept bitterly with them. And David mourned many days for his son Amnon. Absalom fled to his grandfather Talmai, son of Ammihud, the king of Geshur. He stayed there in Geshur for 3 years, and King David, now reconciled to Amnon's death, longed to be reunited with his son Absalom. Joab arranges for Absalom's return. 2 Samuel 14, 1 through 24. Joab realized how much the king longed to see Absalom, so he sent for a woman from Tekoa who had a reputation for great wisdom. He said to her, Pretend you are in mourning, wear mourning clothes, and don't put on lotions. Act like a woman who has been mourning for the dead for a long time. Then go to the king and tell him the story I am about to tell you. Then Joab told her what to say. When the woman from Tekoa approached the king, the sheep bowed with her face. The sheep? What? It doesn't even say sheep here. Where did I put that? When the woman from Tekoa approached the king, she bowed with her face to the ground in deep respect and cried out, O king, help me. What's the trouble? The king asked. Alas, I am a widow, she replied. My husband is dead. My 2 sons had a fight out in this field, and since no one was there to stop it, one of them was killed. Now the rest of the family is demanding, let us have your son. We will execute him for murdering his brother. He doesn't deserve to inherit his family's property. They want to extinguish the only coal I have left, and my husband's name and family will disappear from the face of the earth. Leave it to me, the king told her. Go home, and I'll see to it that no one touches him. Oh, thank you, my lord the king, the woman from Tekoa replied. If you are criticized for helping me, let the blame fall on me and my father's house, and let the king and his throne be innocent. If anyone objects, the king said, bring him to me. I can assure you he will never harm you again. Then she said, please swear to me by the Lord, your God, that you won't let anyone take vengeance against my son. I want no more bloodshed. As surely as the Lord lives, he replied, not a hair on your son's head will be disturbed. Please allow me to ask one more thing of the Lord my king, she said. Go ahead and speak, he responded. She replied, why don't you do as much for the people of God as you have promised to do for me? You have convicted yourself in making this decision because you have refused to bring home your own banished son. All of us must die eventually. Our lives are like water spilled out in the ground, which cannot be gathered up. But God does not just sweep away life. Instead, he devises ways to bring us back when we have been separated from him. I have come to plead with my lord the king because the people have threatened me, I said to myself. Perhaps the king will listen to me and rescue us from those who would have cut us off from the inheritance God has given us. Yes, my lord the king will give us peace of mind again. I know that you are like an angel of God in discerning good from evil. May the Lord your God be with you. I must know one thing, the king replied, and tell me the truth. Yes, my lord the king, she responded. Did Joab put you up to this? And the woman replied, my lord the king, how can I deny it? Nobody can hide anything from you. Yes, Joab sent me and told me what to say. He did it to place the matter before you in a different light. But you are as wise as an angel of God, and so you understand everything that has happened among us. So the king sent for Joab and told him, all right, go back and bring back the young man Absalom. Joab bowed with his face to the ground in deep respect and said, at last I know that I have gained your approval, my lord the king, for you have granted me this request. Then Joab went to Geshur and brought Absalom back to Jerusalem. But the king gave this order, Absalom may go into his own house, but he must never come into my presence. So Absalom did not see the king. Absalom reconciled to David, 2 Samuel 14, 25-33. Now Absalom was praised as the most handsome man in all of Israel. He was flawless from head to foot. He cut his hair only once a year, and only then because it was so heavy. When he weighed it out, it came to 5 pounds. He had 3 sons and 1 daughter. His daughter's name was Tamar, and she was very beautiful. Absalom lived in Jerusalem for 2 years, but he never got to see the king. Then Absalom sent for Joab to ask him to intercede for him. But Joab refused to come. Absalom sent for him a second time, but again Joab refused to come. So Absalom said to his servants, go and set fire to Joab's barley field, the field next to mine. So they set his field on fire as Absalom had commanded. Then Joab came to Absalom at his house and demanded, why did your servant set my field on fire? And Absalom replied, because I wanted you to ask the king why he brought me back from Geshur if he didn't intend to see me. I might as well have stayed there. Let me see the king. If he finds me guilty of anything, then let him kill me. So Joab told the king what Absalom had said. Then at last David summoned Absalom, who came and bowed low before the king, and the king kissed him. Okay. I know, right? Absalom was a little punk. This pretty hair. All right. I got to get used to using my left hand for all the things, like updating the computer for devotions. For when I go for surgery, it's going to be interesting. Left-handed. All right. I'll start again Monday, day 16. I have issues with infomercials. I do. I've ordered everything from grout cleaner to face powder to a neat griller that practically promised to grab the meat out of my fridge and cook it with no effort on my part. I have that same one. However, no infomercials grab my attention quite like the diet ones. With big promises and little sacrifice, you too can be a size smaller by this afternoon. And while everything in my brain screams, it's a scam, something in my heart says, but maybe this is the one sure thing. Maybe this one really will make me feel so full I can eat 3 peas and a half a chicken breast and be satisfied until dinner. Maybe this one will block every bit of fat I consume from being absorbed in my body, thus allowing me to eat without gaining. In the end, my rational mind helps my wishful thinking taste buds put the phone down, slip my credit card back into my wallet, and make peace with my reality. There are no quick fixes. But I have to hand it to these infomercial people. They've figured out a way to tap into the harsh reality of why diets fail. We get tired of sacrificing and our self-effort wears thin. I'm not on a diet. Recently, I was walking through the Chicago airport with some apple slices in my purse for a snack. I was perfectly happy with my apple until I walked past that smell that grabbed me by the collar, got me right in the face, and said, "Don't you know how much happier I can make you?" A shop called Nuts on Clark had just made a fresh batch of caramel popcorn. I love caramel popcorn, and I could easily rationalize purchasing some. I can't get this brand in North Carolina. It could be my special Chicago treat. Lots of other people were getting it. Really, I could have gotten the popcorn, eaten a few handfuls, and saved the rest for my kids, been perfectly fine with my little diet cheat. The problem is, I'm not on a diet. Diets don't work for me. I seem to be able to sacrifice for a season, and then I get tired of sacrificing. I hit my goal weight, and I slowly slip into my old habits. The weight creeps back on, and I feel like a failure. So I'm not on a diet. I'm on a journey with Jesus to learn the fine art of self-discipline for the purpose of holiness. And today, I decided ahead of time I would have a few apple slices for a snack. Deciding ahead of time what I will eat and will not eat is a crucial part of my journey. I also try to plan my meals right after breakfast when I'm feeling full and satisfied. Deciding in advance keeps my thinking and planning rational and on track. The absolute worst time for me to decide is when I've waited until I'm feeling very hungry. At that point, my body is screaming for something quick, and usually quick things come in a full variety of unhealthy temptations. Here's a biblical perspective on temptation. If you think you are standing strong, be careful not to fall. The temptations in your life are no different from what others experience, and God is faithful. He will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. When you are tempted, He will show you a way out so that you can endure. 1 Corinthians 10:12-13. The way out the Lord provides for me is deciding in advance what I will and will not have each day. Verse 14 of the same chapter goes on to say, "Therefore, my dear friends, flee from idolatry." Oh, how this verse points a finger straight at my issues with food and says, this is exactly why this has to be a spiritual journey and not a temporary diet. Expecting anything outside the will of God to satisfy us is idolatry. Nutrition, which is food's intended purpose, means consuming proper portions of healthy choices that enable our bodies to function properly. Idolatry, in the case of food, means consuming ill-sized portions and making unhealthy choices because we feel we deserve it or need it to feel better. Now hear me on this. We aren't to flee food. We need food, but we are to flee the control food can have over our lives. If we flee from the pattern of idolizing food and depending on food to make us feel emotionally better, we will be able to see more clearly the way out that God has promised when we are tempted. 2 elephants in the room. As we're talking about those feelings of deserving or needing certain foods to get by, I think it is quite appropriate to address 2 elephants in the room. Elephant number 1, don't tell me I have to give up all the treats all the time. I'm not saying we have to give up all treats for all time. When I was working towards getting a healthy weight, I did give up all sugar and starchy carbs for a season. When I reached my goal weight, I added some things back into my eating, but did so very carefully. Note the words some and carefully. Now that I'm at my goal weight, if I were to decide in advance to have popcorn at the movies, then I would have a small popcorn with no butter. For the next several days, I would be more careful with my healthy eating regimen and take a pass on adding any additional treats. Through this journey, Though this journey isn't all about weight loss, weight is a measure of whether or not we're making healthy choices. What I've experienced in previous weight loss attempts is that prolonged success is really difficult. I can't go back to my old habits of thinking I deserve a special treat every day. The realities of diet failures speak loudly and clearly that returning to old habits will cause the weight I've lost to return as well. That leads me to the second elephant in the room. Elephant number 2. I don't think this sounds like a spiritual journey. This sounds like a legalistic approach to eating. Please hear my heart on this. I am writing this book as an invitation to consider the freedom found when we bring one of our most basic needs, food, before the Lord and allow Him to guide and guard us in this area. We do need a healthy eating plan, but we must have a depth of restraint that can only come from making this spiritual growth journey. The Apostle Paul addressed this issue. Since you died with Christ to the basic principles of this world, why, as though you still belong to it, do you submit to its rules? Do not handle, do not taste, do not touch. These are all destined to perish with use. These are all destined to perish with use because they are based on human commands and teachings. Such regulations indeed have an appearance of wisdom, and with self-imposed worship, their false humility, and their harsh treatment of the body, but they lack any value in restraining sensual indulgence. Pastor Ray, that was Colossians 2:20-23. Pastor Ray Stedman commented on these verses. A legalist looks at life and says, everything is wrong unless you can prove by the Bible that it is right. Therefore, we must have nothing to do with anything that the Bible does not say is right. That reduces life to a very narrow range of activity. But the biblical Christian looks at life and says, everything is right. God has given us a world to enjoy and live in. Everything is right, unless the Bible specifically says it's wrong. Some things are wrong. They are harmful and dangerous. Adultery is always wrong. So is fornication. Sexual promiscuity is wrong. Lying and stealing are wrong. These things are never right. But there is so much that is left open to us. If we are willing to obey God in the areas that He designates as harmful and dangerous, then we will have the rest of life to enter the company with a Savior. Then we have the rest of life to enter into company with a Savior who loves us and who guides us and guards us in our walk with Him. I especially love that last sentence. Entering into company with my Savior is indeed what I must do for this journey to be successful and long-lasting. It's the component that all my previous diets were missing. Even the medical community is starting to pick up on the crucial role of spiritual commitment. Dr. Floyd Chilton, a physiologist who teaches at Wake Forest University School of Medicine, put it this way. Your willpower is in constant battle with your genes and your calorie-excessive environment. Often your best efforts are no match for your genes and environment. Willpower alone is not enough to bring about this change. Start by realizing that you cannot do this alone. If you are a person of faith, use that connection to help you change. God created us and told us to be faithful with the bodies we've been given. The Holy Spirit empowers us to make lasting change. And Jesus lovingly guides and guards us as we walk with Him, moment by moment, choice by choice, day by day. And that's a plan with promise no infomercial ever can offer. Okay. This is chapter 16, Cindy. Yep, chapter 16. Such a good book. Such a good book. And I love when she says, or not she, when Colossians says, since you died with Christ to the basic principles of this world, why, as though you still belong to it, do you submit to its rules? Girl, if that isn't a lesson for all of us and how we feel about our looks, our clothes, our shape, our bodies, we are held to a standard of Christ, not the world. So why do we constantly compare ourselves to people on TV and in magazines? And do people read magazines anymore? On TV, in movies. Why do we look at celebrities' body types and shapes and say, that is what I should look like? That is how I'm supposed to be built. That is the ideal body type. Says who? The world? Why do we care what the world has to say? The world is a place of crap. Let's face it. The devil is in charge of this world. The devil is roaming about, looking to who he can devour. He's the one making those standards. He's the one setting those standards. But we look at those and think, wish I could look like that. Need to rethink who we are wanting to be like. Why do we want to be like the world? Did you hear that? That was my stomach. That was my stomach saying, KJ, shut up and eat. That's right. It's temporary too. It's temporary. Those things are so temporary. Listen, why are we putting stock in the perky boobs of the neighbor when those perky boobs ain't going to be perky for long? It's true. I know that sounded like a lot, but it's true. We look at other people's bodies and think, I wish my butt was that shape. I wish my boobs were up there where they belong. Well, they belong right where they are. Gravity. Okay? That's where they're meant to be. It's okay. Calm yourself. That's a weird turn for a devotion to take, talking about that. But it's true. It's true. All right. You are absolutely right, Faith. That's so much truth in what you're saying. Absolutely. Okay, guys. Thanks for joining me for devotions this morning. I am going to go live only in my coaching group this morning. So if you are part of Flames, I will be live in just a few moments. This morning, I am having a very interesting breakfast of soft-boiled eggs, asparagus, and hummus. And I'm excited because I love me all three of those things. So I cannot wait for breakfast this morning. So I am going to get myself ready. I have got to be off the phone by 5 minutes to 8 sharp because I have a meeting at 8. So I love you all. Have a blessed day, and I will see you back tomorrow for more devotions, or I'll see you over in Flames group coaching. Bye, guys.